Hey guys, welcome back to PintheQ Productions, PintheQ Podcast. Today in the studio we have Trevor Williams. You might remember him from the Williams Key. He's in the studio with us, and we're going to talk about something pretty incredible, actually. So you don't want to miss this. Trevor, welcome.
Thanks for having me again.
I appreciate it. Yes. For those that don't know about your fire service and your time in the fire service, why don't you talk about how all that started? Because you started as a junior or a fire explorer.
I did, yeah. So I'm from the West Coast, the better half of my life now. Been out here about 18 years in California, Los Angeles area. When I got out here, I was 15, and I had a background as a missionary, which we'll get into, but I wanted to kind of continue on that path a little bit, and firefighting was something I was interested in. And I soon found out you could go join your local fire department's Explorer program. And for the listeners who don't know what an Explorer is, it would be a kid who wants to train with the fire service and shows up once a week, does training, learns the fire culture, might go through Explorer Academy to be able to do 24-hour ride-alongs and just see if it's right for you or not. So when I was 15 and a half, which is the earliest you can go be an Explorer for Los Angeles County Fire Department, which was the fire department in my area, who I'm now a firefighter for. I started my training. So I'd show up once a week, was really into it. You know, they teach you how to act right, and you shave and you comb your hair and you shine your boots. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Or no, ma'am. All that paramilitary lingo. And I had no experience with any of that. So it was cool. And you do your PT, physical training, you do your push-ups, your cadences. It's a whole thing. So you're getting indoctrinated into what life could be like for you if you did become a firefighter. Couple years of doing that training, I was selected to go to the Explorer Academy, which is very competitive, at least where I'm from, and limited spots. And I believe it was, I want to say either 4 or 8 weeks long, just on the weekends. And you're doing live fire training, and you're getting sprayed with hoses and yelled at, and really, you know, getting pushed and stressed, and seeing if you could handle it.
Good.
So yeah, it was cool. It was fun. And I'm still friends with some of those people from, I did that in 2008. There's a guy on my shift now who we were in the Explorer Academy together back in 08.
Very cool.
And he drives for me. So he's
that's awesome.
He outranks me, but we took our test on the same day. And then, yeah, as soon as I became 18, that's when you're allowed to put in your application. So I made sure before I was 18, I had it ready to go, and I was motivated. I knew this is what I wanted. I had been doing ride-alongs. After you do the Explorer Academy, you get certified. You're allowed to do your 24-hour ride-alongs. I did over 1,000 hours of ride-alongs.
Wow.
We have almost 200 stations for LA County, and I picked all the busy spots, and I wanted to get my hands dirty and get the experience and make sure it was right for me. And I knew right away after the first one, I was like, yep, I was born to do this. I love it. So I made sure I had my application ready. When I turned 18, I put it in, and then it was a long waiting game. It took me 7 years to go through county's process. Once I submitted my application, I got a test pretty quickly, but it was just a bad time. 08 was like hiring freezes, the economy was down. It was just poor timing. Meanwhile, I was like, I'll take a firefighter job anywhere. So I started applying all across the country. I applied for FDNY, Vegas, Washington, Texas. I was traveling. I was taking the tests. I was young still, so I knew like if I did get hired, I would have my work cut out for me. Not a whole lot of life experience or anything. Um, but it's better, at least I'm getting the practice in, taking those tests, and it might take me a couple tries before I nail it. Um, but yeah, and let's see, 2016, I believe it was, maybe 2015. I got accepted to Los Angeles County Fire Department Academy, the official one. And I'd been an EMT. I went to school, became an EMT prior to that. I went to community college, got all my fire science classes done. I did their academy. And after I did their academy, I was hired as a volunteer for 4 years, and I did the volunteers academy. So I was like doing as much as I could, just trying to stay motivated, keeping my skills up, and trying to get that badge. Meanwhile, I had to pay the bills too, so I work construction. Did If you listen to the last episode, I did. I installed doors for a couple of years, and that's where the Williams Key stuff was born. But I treated it, my construction job, as if I were a firefighter. So I'd throw my ladder the way I'd throw it in the fire service. I'd flick out my extension cord the way I'd flick out a hose. And I stayed out of trouble, and I showed up early, and I had all the work ethic that would be expected of me once I got on the job as a firefighter. And even the same as a volunteer firefighter, after a year, you're off probation. You can watch TV, you can relax a little bit. But I was like, nope, this is not where I'm going to end up. I'm going to be a rookie my entire time here. I'm never watching TV. I'm just keeping my nose clean. I'm working hard. I'm going to act like a boot until I'm done being a boot with a career department. So yeah, I took it real serious. And I think 2016, I was on the floor as a rookie in West Hollywood, Firehouse 8. And I've been there ever since. I finished my probation there, and I loved it. It was a big house, it's active, 39 firefighters. And there's just always something to learn from somebody there, good or bad. You learn what not to do sometimes. But
Well, tell everybody what it was like for you when you finally got your ticket punched. You got that job you've been dreaming for. I mean, tell me, what was that like?
it was almost surreal. I mean, I did work really hard for it, so I was like, I didn't want to screw it up. There's a lot at stake. Um, I was nervous. I'm probably more nervous than most people just because of what I had invested already. Um, at the same time, I was pretty dialed in the tower. Like I'd been doing it for so long. Like I didn't struggle, other than maybe EMT a little bit, or not my strong suit, the medical side, but um, all the manipulative stuff I was good at. So I wasn't ever worried about points, but I just every day I knew what was at stake. I didn't want to get injured. Um, I didn't want to make a bad name for myself or mess up my reputation. So super excited, super finally happened, like never quitting. Like you never fail until you quit, right? Until you give up. So having been through so much, and I really had to fight through the process. Like they were like losing my paperwork, and I'd find out somebody else got an interview and I didn't, so I started making phone calls, and they're like, oh, today's the last day that you could say you accept the interview. You didn't get the letter we sent you, stuff like that, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I almost lost out on this opportunity from a clerical error, or
And that happens a lot, bro. I mean, that's a good it's a good thing to say, because sometimes you have to persevere. You have to stay on top of things, because sometimes things get lost in the shuffle.
You got to be proactive
Yeah.
for sure, especially like with big departments and that sort of thing. And I've learned that even more recently. I've had a couple injuries now. I've had some surgeries, and I'm not the type of guy who wants to be off for a year. I want to be back as soon as possible. And you have to be on them. You have to be making the phone calls, because there's so many people involved in getting you back to work. sometimes it's just paperwork sitting on the desk for a month before they even take a look at it. So yeah, you're in charge you're responsible for you, like in this field. So you gotta be heads up about that sort of thing.
Well, the one thing I'd like to point out to my viewers is something you said, and that was that it took you, well, it took you 7 years to get your job. So in that whole time, you just staying on top of your dream and you don't quit. And that's something that, we can't quit. If you want something bad enough, you just got to stick with it. And even in your job, doing construction, throwing ladders the same way you do in fire service, throwing your extension cord like a hose line. I mean, that discipline that you had 100% had everything to do with the Fire Explorer program, the volunteer program, you keeping your axe to the grind, man. Just staying true to what you want and making sure it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing was keeping your nose clean. That was a big one. I was afraid to travel. I was like, oh, what if they call me and I missed the call and like it's tomorrow or something and I can't fly back in time. Like I was like to that point where I'm like, I don't want to take any risk here. Like
there's too much at stake, right?
I need to make sure this happens, and you can't get in trouble. You're nothing. You got no drugs or anything like that. You got to keep your nose clean. So, yeah.
And then tell me about your first house. It was Station 8. What was that like?
That was actually my second house. So, the way LA County Fire works is your rookie year, your first year, you do 6 months at your first house, and that was in a city called Duarte. And then my second house was Firehouse 8, which is more of a traditional big firehouse. Like that was kind of what I was looking for. So I was happy to end up there. You don't have to leave when you finish your second spot, unless they want you to, and they'll make that very clear. But for me, they liked me and they allowed me to stay. So, yeah, it's just rowdy. It's like, it's fun. It's like the type of stuff you'd see on a TV show. That's our everyday, just pranks and laughter and training hard and fire. Like the calls were very dynamic, and we protect Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. We get sent out on these big brush fires. We have an extra rig that can get sent out with like within hours away, sometimes out of state even.
Wow.
We could end up on those on brush fires. We have high rise. We're one of the only stations in our department that specialize in high rise. So we're surrounded by high rise. We have a 100-foot aerial ladder because of that. And we were the first truck in our department. In 1950, we got a truck. So there's tradition there. Emergency, the TV show, the first episode was filmed at our station.
At Station 8?
At Station 8, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So if you watch the very first episode of Emergency, it starts out second floor, sliding down the pole. That's where I sleep, up there in the, where that pole is. And
oh wow, that's
it looks a little bit different now, but there's still like recognizable aspects in the station and that correlate with the show. And before that, there was a show called Rescue 8, which is like a black and white show, even older than Emergency. So yeah, a lot of tradition there. We were on a show, one that came out last year called LA Fire and Rescue. It's what was who does it? I think the same guy who does like Chicago Fire and stuff. He came out and did like a reality show where they spent almost 2 years at our station, GoPros everywhere. I'd have to sleep with a microphone on. But we only ended up in the first episode, and then they focused on some of the other stations in our fire department. But that was cool. It was different. Got to kind of see that side of the camera, I guess, or Hollywood.
Right.
Yeah, so there's just so much going on at that station, and I've been there, going on 9 years now. So I'm still there. Like I could leave at any time if I wanted to, but I still feel like I'm learning. I still feel like there's people coming in that I can learn from, and vice versa. So yeah, I'm gonna stick around until I feel like it's time to do the next thing. And it would be taking a test. Probably that would be the next step for me, and be a driver.
So, Trev, you're probably the best guy to ask this question to, because a lot of the people that watch a show or subscribe into this platform, if you will, they are looking to get jobs or trying to get jobs. They're trying to become volunteers, or they're either volunteers and trying to become a career. Um, and it's not happening right away, right? It takes a little bit. So talk to me about, and talk to them about, what are some strategies for staying with it and not quitting.
I think it's important to like have your goals, right? Make a list. Not everybody's like a goal or a list person, but if you've never tried it, it's worth giving it a shot. You can even have like a board in your room or your office where it's like your dream board, right? Like stuff that you want to accomplish, and start small. Give yourself like things that you actually know you can do, like, hey, I'm gonna run twice a week because cardio is important for the fire service, or I'm gonna get a gym membership and make sure I'm going consistently, or I'm gonna work on my diet. Like there's so many like little aspects to it that that kind of build you into the firefighter, right? So um with that being said, um a lot of departments, they service like in the medical field too. So becoming an EMT, that can make you more valuable as a candidate. You're more eligible for more departments if you're an EMT. Take it a step further, you can become a paramedic. That's that's hard. That's time and money there. You're really like committed. But in the meantime, you might be able to get a higher paying job just as a paramedic for an ambulance company. And that'll go a long way for you because you're using skills that you'll need as a captain. Like you'll be on the radio, you'll be like making command decisions that affect people's lives. So that's a good way to go too. Take your fire science classes, volunteer, meet people, go to events. You never know who you're going to meet.
Oh, networking is huge in the fire
Yeah,
service.
networking is huge.
It is huge.
And,
yep.
Don't judge a book by its cover. You don't know who the person is standing next to you. So it could be somebody that could change your life. So yeah, think twice. If you see somebody that you're like, oh, I'm going to say something in a bad way, right? Like you feel like you don't know who they are and you're challenged by them and you're going to like, whatever. That could be a really important person that could have a positive impact on your life. So think twice before
or negative,
something like that. Yeah,
or negative,
yeah. Or negative. Yeah. Well, especially if you say the wrong thing to them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
well, I love your story in the respect that you just never gave up, and that even in construction where you didn't want to be, you made the best of that too. And you developed the Williams key, and I mean all these things are good, and I mean, they're great. And I love the fact that you're sharing your story, because there's people out there that are like, man, I can't catch a break. I can't get the job I want. I'm doing everything I can, but I keep missing. But it might take 7 years. I mean, that's the story here. It just might.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it doesn't. I know we're kind of in a new culture of like instant gratification, and
oh yeah. Yep.
We want the high paying job without doing any work for it. But trust me when I say like you want to earn this, because you might be beside somebody who didn't earn it and they take the job for granted, and they don't treat it the same, and people are going to see that, and they're not going to get the respect. They're not going to understand the culture. And they're you got to sacrifice, like nothing worth doing comes easy. Or
oh yeah,
what's that phrase?
Yeah.
Yep. So the
Nothing
harder you work
comes
for
easy,
it, yeah, the harder you work for it, like the more you're gonna value and cherish it. So
absolutely, and appreciate, like you said, you'll appreciate a lot more, knowing you work so hard for it.
Yeah.
So you're in a busy house in LA. First of all, you're at the station where Mercy was filmed. That's pretty cool in itself, right? I'm a huge history buff when it comes to the fire service. I love it. I love the culture, I love the traditions. That's pretty cool. Just to be in that house. I mean, I know it's a TV show, but it's a very famous TV show based on, when paramedics weren't even, no one even knew what a paramedic was back then. So it's kind of cool that you're in that station. You have high rises. I mean, you're on Sunset Strip. I mean, there's a lot of cool things you got going on, and I love that you got to that point, man. It's cool. Now that it's at the station, and you're pretty content. So, has there been any particular call that stuck with you, or a memorable call?
Yes. So working in my district, Sunset Boulevard and all that stuff, Hollywood, um, people like the thing I get asked the most is like, "Oh, do you see celebrities and stuff?" And it's like we do from time to time. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's rolled up in his Rolls Royce, smoking a cigar, and fist bump us, like my captain, as we're driving. And
That's cool.
you'll see like random, yeah, YouTubers and just random stars from time to time. But yeah, there's a lot of calls that kind of stuck out to me. There's one I can think of specifically that was like really dynamic, where in my department, like you never know where you're going to end up at the end of the day. So on this particular day, I work in West Hollywood. I ended up working at a station in a different city about 50 minutes away called Glendora. And when I got there, I got sent to my first confined space rescue, and I had just completed like USAR training and stuff. So I was stoked. Like I knew what to do.
You're like, here we go, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can do some of that without calling the search and rescue stations, because they'd take like an hour to get there and stuff. So we try and do as much as we can before they get there, so we can cancel them and stuff. So yeah, guy fell down a like construction site manhole, broke some bones, and he was stuck in the bottom. So we got to extricate him. So that was cool. After that, we got sent to another city, couple of cities over, for a fire. We're first on scene for this fire. We roll up, and it's like a field that's on fire behind a commercial business, like a warehouse. And there's a locked gate keeping us from like making good access. So I jump out, bolt cutters. I'm starting to cut the lock on this gate, and we start hearing like explosion noises. And I'm like, oh shoot, like head on a swivel, like
Right.
situational awareness is up. I'm like, that's unusual.
Right.
Maybe there's like propane tanks in the field or something going off. As we're like pulling in, a bunch of cops roll up, and they're like, careful, he's got a gun, he's shooting. And like,
man.
I'm like, oh, there's a guy out there, like we're being shot at, like I'm being shot at while I'm like trying to get us in there. Like, oh, that's good information to know. So then we're like sheltering, because apparently this guy had set the field on fire, and he was protecting it with his gun that he was firing at us. So it turned into a longer call. SWAT showed up. They had like drones going up. They had their snipers. I had to throw a ladder for a sniper to like ladder a building and for him to set up. And before long, we hear a bunch of gunfire. And the ground SWAT crew had gone, found this guy, and lit him up. He got shot, I think, 9 times. So then they're like, hey, they call our engine. They're like, we need you for like medical attention on this victim. And so I went from fighting fire to going and plugging bullet holes on this dude. And he was like, none of them were fatal. So they're like, he's still alive, he's bleeding out. But I'm like, all right, cool, plug all these holes. They get him loaded up in the ambulance. And the way our system works is the paramedics have their own squad that doesn't transport. It's just like a pickup truck. But the medics will jump in with the patient in the ambulance, which is like private contract ambulance. Somebody has to drive their squad. So I had to jump in the squad as a firefighter, follow this ambulance to another city where they transported this guy. So I was like, man, this has been such a crazy day. Like, started off in West Hollywood. Then I was in Glendora. Then I had confined space. Then I had a fire. Then I got shot at. Then that guy got shot at. Then I had to like fix him. Then I had to drive a squad, which I never get to do. And like, it's cool. It's cool what you get yourself into. And
Yeah, you
as
never
long
know
as
what the
you're,
day's gonna bring, right?
yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
That's what makes the job so exciting.
yeah, without a doubt, man. It's funny,
So
like how everything could just in a second just change, right?
yeah,
You go into a field fire and it turns into like this whole thing.
yeah. I mean, I guess we get assigned bulletproof vests, and I guess maybe that's. I wasn't wearing it, but it's good to have in case you need it.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
If you know what you're getting yourself into, and we don't always know. Um, but yeah, you keep your head on a swivel and make it through your career, hopefully.
You mentioned some missionary work that you said to get back to, so I'm curious what that was about.
Yeah, you comfortable?
I'm
this
comfortable, yeah.
this one might be a long one, but yeah, I can. I grew up as a missionary. Kind of start from the beginning real quick, just to give a background on me and my family. But um, when I was 4, I was born in Virginia, and when I was 4, we moved to Africa, the country of Zaire. Zaire is now known as the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we were there during, if you've seen the movie Hotel Rwanda, we were there during that time. So during the Rwanda genocides, the Hutu, Hutus and the Tutsis, I was fumble those tribes.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, they were battling, but then they like a whole civil war started from it, and um, there you got like your child soldiers and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. So we were there during that time. A lot of civil unrest. My dad worked for and this company is still around. It's called World Vision. A lot of people know them because they sponsor kids through them. They might do like a feed the children type of thing. But they're the largest Christian nonprofit in the world, and they do like education and clean water and emergency relief work and just all the whole spectrum of aid they're involved with. So we did emergency relief work when we were in Africa, and before long it got too dangerous to stay in Zaire. We ended up evacuating to Johannesburg, which is in South Africa, to just kind of cool off while this war is going on up north. Meanwhile, South Africa is not that friendly either for different reasons. They have like a large gang presence. So very dangerous at that time. This was in probably 96 or 97. We had to have like a panic button in case like we got kidnapped or we got attacked. I don't know how effective that would be, because it's like even they're like, even if they had a good 911 service or something like that, like, and they didn't,
Yeah.
I don't think they would have gotten to us in time. But
Yeah.
we got a house pretty quickly when we moved down there, and we didn't find out till later, but the family before us had been like slaughtered in their home. So we were like, and here in the States, you have to disclose that sort of information, but not in Africa, not back then. But
Holy cow.
but it's just stuff like that would happen like day to day. So we didn't stay there that long, like almost a year maybe, but we were like trying to get out of there too. Briefly went back to Zaire, which had at that point changed its name, Democratic Republic of Congo. Still dangerous, and ended up evacuating altogether back to the States, just to kind of reevaluate. Like we weren't effective there anymore. It's just too dangerous for us to do any work. So I lived in Connecticut for a little bit. I have a family on the East Coast on that side. Did some school there. I was like preteen. And then when I was 12, almost 13, we moved to the island of Haiti. Actually, it's the island of Hispaniola. Haiti and the Dominican Republic make up that island. It's about 565 miles south of Florida. It's in the Caribbean. At that time, nobody had heard of Haiti. Now they have, because of the Haiti earthquake from 2010. But this was like 2002, I want to say, when we went there.
Man, you had a really interesting childhood.
Yeah, you grow up fast, especially when you're in like some of the most dangerous, countries in war zones, because Haiti was super dangerous too. Most kidnappings per capita in the world at the time, poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. they too had civil unrest, and their government was being overthrown. The president was being ousted. Um, it was bad. Yeah, you'd hear gunfire every day. They'd make roadblocks with dead bodies. They'd burn tires. They'd riot. I was going to a private school there at the time, and sometimes you get to school and somebody didn't show up. Somebody got kidnapped or something happened to them or their family. This is like a day-to-day thing. So yeah, I was bad too. So we were there 3 years, and then we had to evacuate out of there as well. And that's what brought me to California. World Vision has headquarters out here in California, and they told my dad, like, hey, come out to California, let things cool off again. We'll have you back there in like 6 months or something. 6 months turned into 2 years, and by then I was turning 18, and I had already been involved with the fire service and trying to start my career with that. So I decided to stay in California, and my family went back to Haiti. And I hadn't been back. Let's see. I guess some time went by before I went to visit, and I hadn't been back in 5 years. And I decided it was time for me to visit. And I just happened to visit a week before the Haiti earthquake. It was a 7.0 earthquake in Haiti. This was in 2010. It killed 300,000 people, left 1 million more homeless and injured, and was the greatest natural disaster in modern history. It's just absolutely 300,000 people dying. I mean, you don't hear about that anywhere. I mean, like 9/11 was 1% of that, So this is like major, major loss of life in a country that only has 7 million people. So let's get into the story, because it's pretty crazy. I shouldn't be alive. My family shouldn't be alive. I was on the second floor of an orphanage visiting some friends I used to know when I lived there when the earthquake started. And even living in California, like, I hadn't been involved in a major earthquake where I like really recognized it or was afraid of it or anything like that. So this was new to me. And after about 4 seconds, it got really intense, and every second seemed like a minute, or like it only lasted for 39 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity, and just like time stood still. Initially I thought like there was a Big Mac truck rumbling down the road, and then after a few seconds it felt like a train was running into our building. And we were down in the city. Haiti's a mountainous island that kind of slopes down into the ocean. On that day I was like deep down in the city, so I couldn't see what was around me other than like a couple other houses, and it's like a very condensed, overpopulated area. So I started seeing houses going down around us, and like dust and debris fly up in the air. It was noisy. People were screaming. There's 110 orphans at that orphanage, 110 kids. All the special needs kids were on the second floor where I was. Not sure why they were on the second floor. That seems like a little hard for special needs, but that's just how it worked out. But I knew that if I wasn't okay, I couldn't help other people. So this is kind of like, this is a tough conflict a lot of firefighters have. Like, we always want to, take the risk and save a life. But if we become part of the problem, we can't help, and we use up resources and stuff. So my goal was to stay alive, and I was on the second floor balcony. I saw a truck down below that I could jump onto if our building started to collapse. Fortunately it did not, but tables and chairs and everything came off the wall. There's cracks in the walls. Part of the wall surrounding the orphanage had fallen down, and it got rocked. So as soon as it finished, we got all the kids out and into like a temporary refuge area, if you will, away from the collapse zones as much as possible, from this 2-story orphanage and the walls that surrounded it. And we didn't know if this earthquake was like the first one of many, if that was the small one, or if there's
Yeah,
something
really.
even bigger coming. Like there was a lot of unknowns, and nobody's phone worked. All the cell phone towers went down. There's 7 million people trying to make phone calls, or what was left of those people. So there's no getting through. And we also didn't know like how devastating it was. Like nobody had been timing it, at least initially where I was at. Like nobody knew anything. And we didn't know if it was just like a little area that was affected where we were, or if it was like the whole country or the whole world. Like, we had no idea what was going on. This happened close to dusk, so in the evening, and my family wasn't with me, but they had a good idea of I could have been like one of two places. So eventually my dad showed up, and he had this look on his face that I'd never seen before. He pulled me aside. He's like, Trevor, we need to talk. And he was by himself. And he was like, I went back to the apartments where your mom and your two sisters, we knew they were there during the earthquake. And this was a 5-story apartment on the side of a mountain. He's like, the apartment is completely collapsed and pancaked, all the floors, and there's nobody alive in the apartments. And I didn't know what to.
I can't imagine what you were going through at that moment. It must have been terrifying, man.
Yeah, it was like disbelief, I guess, would be one word I would pick. I didn't want to believe my family was dead, and he didn't say they were dead. He just said he couldn't find anybody alive, and hadn't located their bodies. So I was like, no, there's no way, like we're missionaries. God had us in the country for a reason. Like he would protect us, right? That's kind of what was going through my head. And I was like, okay, well, we need to go look for them. And he's like, we can't. Like the whole country is leveled. Like there's all the walls, and that the streets are bad as it is. Like they're like dirt potholed roads, and now all the walls have collapsed into the street. Again, we didn't know like how extensive the damage was, but he knew from coming to get me. It took him hours to come find me. He knew it was like really bad, and he was actually the first point of contact that the United States had with Haiti. CNN, Wolf Blitzer called the director of World Vision Haiti, which was my dad, moments after the earthquake hit. And my dad was like, we don't know anything yet, and he just wants to go find his family.
Yeah, Jesus.
So
yeah, wow.
He's on there for a few seconds, claim to fame, but was not able to give any information to the United States. So yeah, he was like, we got to go. The pastor has a place up in the mountain. It's safer. There's a satellite phone there, so that's the plan for tonight. We got to go get our rest, and then tomorrow we'll start looking. So we made our way up the mountain. It took a long time. We were having to navigate all the rubble in the streets, and you would see, parents digging by candlelight, like trying to find their kids, and vice versa, kids digging for their parents. Like, lots of dead bodies already, lots of blood everywhere. You just see like rubble with blood all over it. When they'd find a body, they'd pull it out into the street and just leave it there. Like there's no place to put bodies. But yeah, it was a scene. It was very, very graphic and devastating. And
how old are you at this point, bro?
19.
Wow.
I was 19. So I wasn't on the job yet. I was construction
right.
at that time.
Right.
I'd been going to school a little bit too, so I'd just become an EMT, just gotten my National Registry card, had a little bit of the Explorer training, had a little bit of the fire science classes. So I felt like
nothing's preparing you for that, right? And no matter what.
Yeah. But I felt like I was in Haiti for a reason. I didn't think there was any coincidence that I just happened to show up a week before all this was happening to be there for my family. And with it, I brought medical training, search and rescue training. I knew the language from living there. I had like local knowledge. So I'm like, all right, I'm I'm supposed to be here. I knew that for sure. But I had no idea, what the next day was going to hold for us. So we made it to the pastor's house that night. We were able to use the satellite phone. We called my mom's parents. We told them, like, hey, right now it's just me and my dad who are accounted for. We got there's a lot going on right now, so we're trying to stay like optimistic for them, but they were just like in hysterics, and word had made it to the States and the news and everything, and they probably knew more than we did at that point. But they're just like, what do we do, and they're crying and stuff, and I was like, pray. That's the only thing we can do right now, is like, there's nothing else we can do other than that. Meanwhile, aftershocks are hitting, like 5.0 aftershocks, bringing down more buildings. These buildings are unreinforced concrete, so like they skimp out on the rebar a lot of the time. They're built on top of each other. There's domino effect collapses going on, and some of them are barely hanging on from the initial earthquake. So a 5.0 aftershock is bringing down more buildings.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're over the next couple weeks, there's like hundreds and hundreds of aftershock, like tons. And again, we didn't know if like a bigger one was coming, if that just kind of started a ripple effect of something even bigger. So a lot of fear, a lot of unknown. Couldn't sleep that night for multiple reasons.
Good. Wow.
Multiple reasons. The biggest one was like thinking about my family and thinking about what to do, and I couldn't believe it, and disbelief. Fighting reality, like just that hurts so bad. Like you don't even want to like be in it. It's just imagining life without your family like that. It's just, that was like, I can't describe it. It's undescribable unless you've been there. But trying to keep hope alive at the same time. I'm like, maybe one of them made it. Maybe they all made it. We don't know yet. We got to go find them. So the next morning, as soon as the sun started to rise, a little bit of daylight, I was up. I was like, all right, Dad, we got to go. Let's go find them. Let's go rescue them. And he's very wise, calculated dude. He's like, no, we need our strength. We need to eat. We need to sit down and eat and get our plan for the day. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's right. So I wasn't hungry, but I was like trying to force myself to eat. And while we're doing this, he starts talking about funeral plans. And I was like, that just killed me. That's when I started to cry. That was the first time I started to cry. I was like, I can't believe he really believes that they're gone. And he's seen more than I have. Like I haven't seen what he's seen yet, so he really believes they're gone. And I was trying to hold it together, but I couldn't. So I excused myself from the table where we were eating, and I walked out to the balcony in this house that overlooked, we're up in the mountains at this point, it overlooked all of Haiti. It was my first time seeing Haiti in the daylight, and this is the most vivid memory to me from that event, one of them, because what I saw for the first time just like blew my mind. Could not believe it, because the sun was like just starting to come up from the ocean. There's fires everywhere. There's like smoke headers everywhere. The earthquake had created like just tons of fires for some reason. And there's debris. The sun was like piercing through the smoke. It was red. It was just like, you could tell like the country had been hurt bad, like really bad. And you could hear people wailing all the way down the mountain and singing, but like mourning. And it was just so vivid, and it became more real at that point to me. So yeah, that's when I let some tears go, and I was just like, oh man, this is for real. Like, this is bad. So pulled myself together. We got in the car, started going down the mountain, and the plan was to stop at the World Vision headquarters, my dad's office, and get as many supplies as we could, like some water and tarps and shovels and gloves and body bags, but not for us, for other people we might find, and trying to stay positive and stuff. And we made our way down that mountain. And I see people with their belongings, like all beat up, covered in debris and like bloody and stuff, but like holding a few of their prized possessions. Some were going up the mountain, some were going down the mountain. Like people didn't know what to do. Um, a lot of confusion, going on. But um, I started making eye contact with like some of these people that were walking on the street, and um, I'm not Haitian. I'm American, and I look different, and I talk funny, and I don't fit in with the culture. But at that moment, we had all survived the same disaster, and we were family. We were brothers and sisters, and I knew that like we had this connection now that we're gonna be resilient together and help each other survive. So that was kind of the sentiment I was getting going down the mountain, and it was so heavy.
That's
But
incredible, man.
yeah, so we eventually made it to my dad's office, and we pulled in the front gate and got out, started looking for supplies and stuff, and I started hearing a commotion. Not long after that, like a bunch of yelling and people were calling our names, and my mom and one sister had come in the back gate holding each other, limping, covered in dust and debris.
God, I can't imagine what you're going through at that moment, man.
Just yeah, just incredible, like seeing like my family again. They made it, at least
yeah.
two of them. But I didn't see my youngest sister, and she was like 7 at the time. And I was like, oh man, maybe Priya, my youngest sister, maybe she didn't make it. She's just very tragic, but she did make it. Somebody carried her in, and she wasn't able to walk because she had like debris and rubble and stuff in her eyes, so she couldn't see. But somebody was helping carry her. And so all of us met up and just held each other for a while and cried and like celebrated that we'd all made it and found each other. And that is like, that's the strongest feeling I've probably ever experienced, just going from like complete loss to like second chance, for my family again, and everybody's alive. And oh, it was beautiful. It was like, it's something I still think about almost every day 14 years later.
Yeah, I mean that I can't imagine what you're going through, all those emotions. I mean, you're trying to help people in this amazing disaster at the same time. You can't find your family. I can't imagine the emotional toll that took on you. At such a young age too, at 19. I mean, that's
yeah, it was a lot to process, that's for sure. And I mean, I still get to talk about it even like right now. This is therapeutic for me. So, I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show and share this experience, but there's a lot more to it. So um, after we all got together, we wanted to get medical help for my mom, especially. We thought she broke her arm and her leg, and she had no shoes. And the youngest one, she couldn't see, and she had no shoes. And my other sister, her name's Dawn. I believe she was 14 at the time. She did have shoes, and she was the one kind of keeping them all together and keeping them focused. So what happened? The reason they're alive and they shouldn't be, they had all just gotten home from school, and my family's apartment is on the bottom floor of this 5-story apartment that hangs off the side of this mountain. When the earthquake started, it started pancaking down floor by floor, starting at the top, and they could hear it and feel it. And the wall broke open right next to them, and they all just happened to be together, which doesn't normally happen. They all just happened to be together right there, and they jumped out, rolled down the mountain. Apartment rolled with them, kind of going down the mountain with them, so they were getting banged up. And when they came to a stop, they eventually found a tree that they climbed up into, and they spent the night up there. They had to find shelter because Haiti is a dangerous country for anybody, and it was almost nighttime, so for anybody, but especially like women, very dangerous for them. And they're not local or anything, so they stand out. And then the prisons broke open from this earthquake. There was rumor of a tsunami coming because of the earthquake. right away looting started to happen. Our place got looted. So they just kind of like sheltered in place until the next morning. Next morning, somebody helped them get to the office, and that's where we all found each other. But um, we had to get them to the U.S. Embassy to try and get them evacuated out and to the back to the States to get some help. So we eventually made it to the U.S. Embassy. We were prioritized, and we were going to be on the next flight for the Air Force to fly us to the States. And I told my dad, like, hey, I need to stay. Like, the family's safe now. You're there with them, and we're all together. We're in good hands. Like, I'm here for a reason. Like, I know I am. Like, I feel it. I know the language. I know the country. I'm an EMT. I have this search and rescue training. I got some fire experience. Like, I'm a helper. Like, this is like, I'm in the perfect spot to do that. And he's like, he didn't argue. He's like, you're right. He gives me the car keys, and then they get on the plane and they fly back to the States. And now I'm on my own in Haiti. And people were like, "Oh, you're crazy! Like, you have the gold. You're American. You have the golden ticket to go home. You know, to go to America." And I was like, "No, my golden ticket is where I'm at right now, to stay here, because the whole world's gonna try and come here to help, and they're not gonna be able to. The airport's shut down. It's damaged. Like, only like specialty planes are gonna be able to land, and resources are gonna be very limited." Like, I knew that. So I knew I was there to help out. And that first night, I spent the night at the U.S. Embassy by myself. Everybody else had left and been flown out, and they didn't let them bring their bags. So people were like giving me stuff to kind of help me prepare. So I had a backpack, and I put like some food and clothes and stuff in it. And I woke up to somebody stealing my bag. So I jumped up, I grabbed it back. I was sleeping on the ground. And then I wore the backpack on my front, went back to sleep, and I'm like, oh man, it's going to be an adventure. So the next day, I take the car and I go to the World Vision headquarters, where I knew people knew my dad. And I'm like, this is probably a good place to start helping. You know, like, I know they have like some food here, and people are hungry. Like, all the grocery stores collapsed. Food, water, and gasoline are the high priority items. Money doesn't matter. Like, people just want to eat. And there's dudes with shotguns on top of the rubble at the grocery store, like shooting people on site that are trying to take food and stuff. So people are already desperately hungry before the earthquake, and now it's even worse because the access is like, there's even less food than there was before. So the people at World Vision thought that I was like, had the same capabilities as my dad, which is not true at all, you know, as a 19-year-old. But they're like, oh, Mr. Frank, you know, you're his son. Yeah, you're good. Okay. So they put me in charge of food distribution on land. We loaded up a big truck full of food. We drove it out into the city, and we just got ransacked. And it was like super unsafe. People were like climbing all over us, taking food, pushing. And I was like, all right, we got to go. Like, we didn't distribute even half of the food before it was too unsafe for us, and we had to leave. So I went back to World Vision, decided to like re-strategize. And I was like, okay, if we're going to do this again, big soccer field. I want an entrance, an exit. I want them secured. I want security with us. We'll bring people in like an orderly fashion. And we tried that. Same thing. We got overran to the point where, like, you know, guns were about to be fired and stuff. So we left. We got out of there, and I was like, okay, this isn't working. I'm probably not the right guy for this job anyway. So I started looking for the next thing, like the next way that I could help. And when I was at the U.S. Embassy, I saw LA County's Task Force 2 fly in. So the department that I work for now, and this is before I worked for them, they have an international search and rescue team, which is world renowned. It's like a really good one. And I just so happened to be wearing some LA County shirt and hat, and that's all I had on me. I lost everything else I had, and the apartment collapsed. I didn't have any other clothes, but I just so happened, because I was an explorer, I had an LA County shirt and an LA County hat, and we were separated by a fence. But I saw
Like, what are the chances of that, right?
yeah, super like
What are the
bizarre.
chances? Yeah.
And so I saw Task Force 2 come in, and I run it over to the fence. I'm like, hey guys, like I'm yelling at them, and they're like, who is this kid? Like, why is he wearing county stuff? Like, what is going on? So they're curious. They came over and talked to me, and I was like, I kind of gave them a pitch, and I was like, can I help? Like, I know the language, I know the country, I'm an explorer. And they're like, no, kid, sorry. Like, there's too much red tape for them. They're like FEMA and OFTA, and they're just regulated, right? So I was like, oh man, this would have been perfect. So I was a little butthurt about that, but eventually I was like, I'm gonna get hired one day and I'm gonna get on that team. That was like a big goal for me for a while, and I eventually did do that once I got on the job.
Nice, bro. Very nice.
Yeah, so that was like I felt good once that actually kind of came to fruition because it took a long time, but um, I had a good reason why I wanted to be on that team. But in the meantime, while I was in Haiti, I found another search and rescue team, and it was like pieced together, like not as regimented as a Task Force 2, like nationally or internationally recognized team. But this team was great too. So it had a cadaver dog, it had security, it had a Navy SEAL, a pilot, Army Ranger, a paramedic. So a little bit of everything. And I pitched myself to them, and I was like, hey, all I can offer is like, I know the language, I know the country. I was here when the earthquake happened. Like, can I help? I can dig, like I was trying to get involved. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So I went around with them. We didn't find anybody alive. It was body parts only, unfortunately.
That's
But
terrible.
yeah, we're trying, and it was tough. And I think the LA County search and rescue team had like, I don't know, over 10 saves, like maybe 10 to 17, somewhere in there. But they have got big teams, tons of equipment, all the intel, and they did a little bit better, but at least we were trying, And before long, I had made friends. We were back and forth to the airport a lot, so I'd made friends at the airport, and I met a group of Mormons who were independently wealthy, and they had flown down 3 of their own helicopters. And I was like, this seems like a cool group of guys. Like maybe I can get with them. And what they were doing was like they were like stealing food, and they were dropping it all over the country, because the food that was getting donated from all these countries like Russia and China, and like all these big planes were landing, dumping food, and taking off, and there's nobody to like distribute it. It was too dangerous. Like my story earlier, people were just getting hurt, trying to get the food out. People were desperate out there.
It's crazy to me to think you were just thrown into that, and that's incredible, man. At 19 years old, trying to orchestrate that, that's incredible.
Yeah, I felt like I gave it a good try, but yeah, it was just too dynamic. At that point, like we didn't know what to expect. But yeah, absolute desperation. People are going into their like animal instinct modes where they'll kill for food. They'll kill for food. And so anyways, I ended up with this helicopter team, and they wanted to use me, and this was the most fun I had in Haiti by far. All day long I was going on these helicopter rides. We'd load them up with food, 50-pound bags of beans, and we'd jump out with Rambo knives, rip them open, dump them, helicopter take off. People would be coming out of the woodworks, and
Man, oh man.
we'd have to jump in the helicopter before the people got to us. So it was like very exciting and dynamic. And at night, they'd fly to the Dominican Republic. They paid the mafia to secure a baseball field and protect us. And money talks, right? So they could kind of do whatever they wanted. And it was by far the most effective, I would say, of getting food out. And eventually we kind of learned some strategy distributing food by helicopter, and we'd hover over rivers and like throw canned goods out, and people would go in the river and collect it instead of putting ourselves in risk by landing. And yeah, so after about a week of doing that, they left. I'd made more friends at the airport, and there was a big MASH tent set up by the University of Miami, And it was just a hospital, like a giant circus tent hospital, where they were catering to like all these bodies that they were bringing in, that people who were still alive, and even up to like I think 20 days later, they were still finding people alive that
Wow.
had been buried next to a water source or like with food or something.
Wow.
Um,
That's
but just
incredible.
tons of gnarly stuff, like lots and lots of amputations. Um, when I first got there, they like verified me. They're like, "Do you have your national registry card?" Because I told them I was an EMT, and I had gone back to the apartment to like kind of look for my stuff. All my stuff had already been looted, but somebody had found my wallet, taken the money, risked more than I would have risked, like going deep in there to find it. And they left my wallet with my national registry card in there. So I had this beat up, like it had
That's
been hit
crazy.
by an earthquake, but it still, you could still read my name on it and stuff. And I presented that. I was like, I was proud of it. I'm like, yeah, I do have it. I went back to get it. And so they like looked up my number and they're like, all right, help however you can, you know. And from there, I was like, dude, holding legs while they're cutting on them and doing amputations and taking eyeballs out and starting IVs and pushing drugs, doing all sorts of stuff I'd never be able to do in the States. But we're like in an emergency scope of practice, so I could just be as productive as I could in that scenario. But I was there for about a week, and you just go until you drop, and then you sleep on a cot, eat an MRE, and then like back at it. You're taking little naps, but just around the clock until you're done, until you're too burnt out to do anymore. Um, that was almost towards the end of my stay in Haiti. There's one more thing I did. I did rubble removal. So I joined up with another team, and we would go find wells that had been covered by rubble, and these villages had no water access. So it was like a pretty simple, effective way to like make a big difference. So you're digging out these wells, uncovering these wells again, so that people would have drinking water, and that's huge. That was saving lives, you know. Oh, I will share a quick story um, that I think is pretty cool, and I always forget this story, but it's pretty epic. So I used to go to high school in Haiti when I was living there. It was during some of my high school years, and my first time back at that high school was after the earthquake. I was with the helicopter team. I was pretty much my last flight, and they're like, "Hey, thanks for helping us. We'll take you wherever you want to go, and we'll drop you off. So if just let us know." So I was trying to find where I knew like the church was that I used to go to, because I knew it had a big open field, and I knew my way from there. But I couldn't find it from the air. Like it was hard to like make stuff out. But I saw my school's basketball court, and I was like, "Oh, that's my old school. Land on the soccer field."
That's incredible, man.
And so they come. It's a small helicopter, but they landed on the soccer field right in the middle. And like the army had set up a base at the school, and there was like lots of missionaries and people who were like students and involved with the school, like working out of that facility. It wasn't functioning as a school anymore, but it's like a lot of people I knew, and it was my first time like going back to my school after all these years, right? And I land in the middle of the soccer field and hop out of this helicopter, and they didn't know who I was at that moment, and they're pissed, right? Because I'm like flipping over these army tents and just causing all this rotor wash everywhere. So I hop out, and they immediately take off, and I'm just standing there by myself, and all these people are running over to me to see who I was, and they're like, "Oh, you must think you're pretty special," you know. They're starting to yell at me and stuff, and I'm like, "It's Trevor Williams." Like my sisters were going to that school at the time, so they know the Williams and everything. And they're like, "Oh shoot, okay," you know. And some of my old teachers are still working there and stuff. So it turned into like a pretty cool like first time back at school drop off thing. So I always forget that part of my story, but
I'm sure
I should share this.
at that moment, I mean, you needed that. You needed that. I mean, after all everything you saw, right? Everything you've been through with your family, the devastation, just everything you saw in general. It must have been so special for you to have that little moment right there.
Yeah, it's something that I keep with me. and I forget about it sometimes, but it is, yeah, it was definitely a special moment. And then I was seeing a lot of old friends there at school, and that's how I got hooked up with the rubble removal team, because they were like working out of the school. And then after that, I was like, I think it's time for me to go home.
Yeah.
And
how long were you there? How long were you in the country?
almost a month.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, almost a month with no money, no phone, no, like, just flying by the seat of my pants. And when I did want to go home, I wasn't able to just like, hey, I'm gonna go buy a ticket, or I'm gonna call my dad and see if he can buy me a ticket. Or none of that. People have been trying to get out of the country ever since the earthquake, and the airport is shut down. But I like knew in my heart, I'm like, my work here is done for now. I want to keep helping, but I just can't. Like,
you need a mental reset at some point.
Yeah, I need a reset.
Right.
Yeah, I was seeing so much gnarly stuff every day, and by that point, like, most of the people, there's nobody else to save. There's still hundreds of thousands of people buried. You could smell it everywhere you went. It was like starting to get bad. Like, anywhere you went, you could smell the decay. And at this point, they were loading up dump truck after dump truck after dump truck of dead bodies.
Oh my god!
Lining up out to a mass grave that they had dug, like, out by the out by the countryside and stuff. So yeah, it was getting pretty bad. And then cholera was setting in too, because it was starting to rain, and then that was washing over the dead bodies and getting into people's like drinking water and living spaces and stuff. But all that aside, I needed to go home. So they told me, you're not going to be able to go home. They're like, people aren't getting out right now. I was like, okay, but take me to the airport. So I'm like, I'm just going to go as far as I can and see what happens. And no passport, nothing, no money, nothing. So I got dropped off at the airport. I was like, I'm just going to walk and see if I can get in. Walk past security, walk past the checkpoints. Nobody stopped me. Kept walking until I made it out to the tarmac. I get out there. There's people who'd been set up for weeks trying to like catch a private charter, or like trying to get out any way they can. And I'm out on the tarmac, kind of looking around, seeing what my next move could be. Somebody runs over to me. They're like, hey, we have a flight going to the Bahamas. It leaves in like 10 minutes. We thought we should talk to you. We got one more spot. And I was like, okay.
That's incredible. You got all the way out to the tarmac, and now you're getting a ride. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, what? I don't have any money though. I don't have a passport. They're like, that's okay. You can donate to us later if you want, or whatever. I'm like, okay. I knew I needed to, like, trust this process and just go. So within probably half an hour of showing up at the airport, I was on a flight. It stopped in the Bahamas, fueled up, and then it flew to Florida. And in Florida, I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna make it through customs or anything. Like, I don't know what to do next. Same thing though. I'm like one foot in front of the other. I went last for customs because I didn't want to like cause a problem or hold people up. So I got in the last in line, and I just like kept moving through. Nobody asked me for an ID. Nobody checked anything.
That's
like
incredible,
they just let me through.
That's so awesome. I was definitely looking out for you.
Yeah, God's like paving the way.
Yeah.
For sure. So now I'm out of the airport in some random airport in Florida. I don't even know what city I'm in. And I asked to borrow a cell phone. Then I called my dad. I was like, hey dad, I'm alive. I'm back in the States. I'm in Florida. Can you get me a ticket somewhere? And he's like, yeah, you need to be at this airport. I forget which one, like Miami or whatever, by tomorrow morning. So I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do that with no money. And I got in one of those vans that was just like picking up tons of people. And I got in a van, and I'm like, I hope we're going the right way. And we drive an hour, and luckily it's like in the right direction. I make friends on this bus, and I kind of share with them my story, and they're like, oh, you could like sleep on the floor in our hotel tonight if you want. I'm like, all right, cool, I will. So I slept on the floor.
Bro,
Next morning,
your story is like incredible. I can't believe you need to write a book
yeah,
about
I
this.
started to.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I need to finish it, but I did start one.
Yeah, no
Um,
kidding. It's seriously. This is an incredible story. It's like nuts, everything you've been through. I mean, even what you're talking about now is incredible to me. Like how you even got to Florida.
yeah. So same thing. Slept on the floor. Next morning,
Some random
Continental.
hotel.
Yeah,
Random
random
hotel, random
hotel,
people, right?
random people that were nice. Continental breakfast for free that next morning. Hopped into one of those free shuttles. He got me to the airport I needed to be at, and then that's when I had to like do some explaining because like the ticket was bought, but like I couldn't prove that I was Trevor Williams and stuff. So I'm like, listen, I just got out of Haiti earthquake. Like I lost all my stuff. Just put me on that flight. And the first line I was in like denied me. So I got in another line and they let me through. And then I got on that plane and I was able to get home.
Did you still have your national registry card? What was left of it?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember if I pulled that out or not
yeah,
to
yeah,
prove my name, but I did have that. You're right. Never thought of that.
yeah.
Um, so I was done helping in Haiti physically, but I still felt a calling um, to help out because I got a second chance too. I didn't explain this part of the story, but one of the things I had set up in Haiti when I was initially going to visit was I was going to teach fire training to the United Nations because they had a new fire program, and I was like, I'm not like an expert, but I know enough to like do basic training with people who know nothing, and this could, resume builder, get to go back to Haiti, get to visit my family, like it was a win-win. Um, but UN was like, cool, yeah, we think we want you, but we do have some formalities, so you need to physically come in, do a little interview, and get your ID badge. So they scheduled that on the day of the earthquake during the time of the earthquake. And had I gone to that interview, I would have been dead. That building completely collapsed. 300 people in that building died. Everybody died in that building. But I just so happened to reschedule my interview for the day
Man,
before, just so that I could get to work sooner.
God was
So
definitely looking out for you.
yeah, God was looking out for me for sure.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't find this out until like later, like a few weeks later, because I didn't know I'd like skipped out on a building collapse just because I rescheduled my interview. But yeah, later I found that out. I was like, oh shoot, oh that's crazy. Like God was really looking out. So I knew I got a second chance. My family got a second chance, and I wanted to keep helping Haiti. My heart's in Haiti. Like I grew up there, and I love the people, and just wanted to keep giving back. Right. So I started a nonprofit organization once I got back home. It's called Firm Foundation, spelled Firme, Firme, which means solid or strong in the Creole language. And the mission is to build houses for earthquake survivors. So it made it happen. And as a 19-year-old, I had to figure out how to like run a business, run
Look at you, bro.
a 501c3, and all by myself. So I was
It's
making phone
unbelievable,
calls,
man.
all that stuff. So big learning experience, which is what has helped me in business today. Just being a proactive go-getter and learning how stuff works. But we built 39 houses so far, and
Good for you, man.
yeah, that's been super rewarding, and I feel like I am making a big difference there with my team and everything. And just the last couple of years have been just so dangerous in Haiti. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. So
Yeah.
right now, like it can't go, but we still collect donations and all that stuff. So hopefully in the future, we'll still be able to continue the work.
Bro, it's an incredible story, man. Like there was no point that you didn't have my attention. I just can't believe that you went through all that. Have you really processed all this, do you think?
So I want to say yes, because initially I had PTSD. I would wake up yelling and flailing and punching and stuff. And I was able to do some therapy after that. And then with the nonprofit, that's when I like really started sharing my story a lot and trying to yeah, I just shared it like tons, and I travel around to colleges and schools and churches, and just kind of shared some of, not this long, but some of what I shared with you, and meanwhile, like raising money and stuff. So I think that's a big therapeutic thing. My family had it worse because they got ripped out of Haiti immediately, and they weren't there for like a couple extra weeks where they could like kind of process some of that. Where I did, like, I saw worse stuff than they did, but I was processing every day of like what I was going through. I was trying to make sense of it all. Um, and I continued to do that like to this day, like we're talking right now. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. There's probably like, there's always going to be something, you know, that I can work on a little bit more. But I think having this experience has really helped me as a firefighter, because my worst day as a firefighter has never come close to my worst day as a missionary in Haiti. And that's like my threshold is nothing's come close to nothing's come close to here. It's like always, even the worst calls are like way down here for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you what you went through is people will maybe never go through that length, thankfully, but you have that experience that you can, persevere through pretty much anything in the fire service.
Yeah, and I mean, is that a good thing? I don't know. I think it helps me as a firefighter. Like, I'm not internalizing every call I go on. But have I been through some stuff? Yeah, like it. Yeah, and we're all human at the end of the day. So it's like there's a point where you become like so shut off that it's unhealthy, and I don't think I'm there yet. I think there's a risk to that, so I'm mindful of it. Where you're just like dead inside. Like, I don't want to be that guy either, So I'm trying to trying to balance
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I mean, it's incredible, man. It's an incredible story. You have to finish the book, though. You have to.
You're
I mean,
right.
people need to read this. It's incredible.
I just need to find a little bit of time. You know what though? I started writing the book right after, right after the earthquake, when it was more fresh, and it was too painful to write, and I was just, it was messing me up.
No kidding. Yeah,
So maybe now
that
that,
makes sense.
yeah, now that time
Yeah,
has gone by and I've been able to process a little bit more of it, it might be a healthier time for me to do that.
yeah, without a doubt, man. It's incredible, man. It's just you're a pretty remarkable person. The missionary work, and you're very humble. You've been through a lot. You shared an incredible story with me, which I appreciate, and I know our viewers are going to certainly appreciate a story like this. Um, what advice would you give somebody right now that's looking to get into the fire service? Let's hear it.
Um, so as you heard from my story, I was a victim of circumstance, and I could have gone a lot of different ways with it. And I would say like some life advice is make lemonade out of lemons. Take your bad experiences and turn them into good ones. You might get discouraged in your process trying to become a firefighter, but use that as fuel to be better, to be a more experienced candidate. Um, get Become battle hardened, because you're going to be that much better for it.
Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the show. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with me. I know it's a very personal story, so I feel honored that you shared that with me and with us. And I wish you nothing but the best and more success, not only with the Williams Key but also with your firefighting career. And I'm looking forward to talking more with you, bro.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man.